The Shining, by Stephen King, is a horror novel that was first published in 1977. It tells the story of Jack Torrance, a struggling writer and recovering alcoholic, who takes a job as the winter caretaker at the Overlook Hotel, a remote and isolated hotel in the Colorado Rockies. Jack sees it as an opportunity to work on his writing and reconnect with his wife, Wendy, and their young son, Danny. However, as they settle into the hotel, they soon discover that the Overlook has a dark and malevolent presence that begins to unravel their sanity and threatens to destroy them. The novel opens with Jack Torrance being interviewed for the position of winter caretaker by Mr. Ullman, the hotel manager. Jack has a troubled past, having lost his teaching job due to an incident involving his temper and alcoholism. Despite this, he is hired due to his writing background and his promise to stay sober during his time at the Overlook. Jack sees it as a fresh start for his family and a chance to rekindle his relationship with Wendy and Danny. As winter sets in and the hotel becomes cut off from the outside world due to heavy snowfall, the Torrance family is left alone in the vast and eerie Overlook Hotel. Danny, who possesses psychic abilities known as the Shining, starts to experience strange occurrences, such as vivid and disturbing dreams, and encounters with supernatural entities. He also becomes aware of the hotel's dark history, including a past caretaker named Charles Grady who went mad and murdered his family before taking his own life. As Danny's visions become more frequent and terrifying, Wendy becomes increasingly concerned for her son's well-being, while Jack dismisses his experiences as mere dreams. However, Jack's mental state starts to deteriorate, and he becomes increasingly irritable and prone to violent outbursts. He also starts having disturbing dreams and encounters with the hotel's spectral inhabitants, including a mysterious woman in room 217 and a bartender named Lloyd who seems to serve him drinks despite the hotel being empty. As the days go by, the Overlook's supernatural influence on Jack intensifies, and he becomes increasingly obsessed with the hotel's dark history and the idea of becoming one of its victims. He starts to isolate himself from his family and becomes fixated on the hotel's sinister secrets, including a topiary garden that seems to come to life and a hedge maze that appears to change its layout. Meanwhile, Wendy tries to protect Danny from the hotel's malevolent forces and seeks help from the hotel's maintenance man, Dick Halloran, who shares Danny's psychic abilities. Halloran warns Wendy and Danny about the dangers of the hotel and advises them to leave, but they are trapped by the snowstorm, and Jack's growing madness makes escape seem impossible. As Jack becomes more unhinged, he becomes convinced that the hotel wants him to kill his family and offer their souls to the hotel's dark powers. He begins to see himself as the hotel's chosen instrument and succumbs to its influence. He sabotages the hotel's communication equipment and confronts Wendy and Danny with a weapon, intent on carrying out the hotel's bidding. Wendy and Danny flee from Jack, navigating the hotel's dark and labyrinthine corridors, pursued by Jack who is now fully under the hotel's control. They encounter various supernatural manifestations, including the ghost of Mrs. Massey, a former guest who died at the hotel, and the ghostly partygoers who hold a macabre celebration in the ballroom. In the climactic showdown, Jack chases Danny into the hedge maze, with Wendy following close behind. Danny uses his psychic abilities to create an illusion that leads Jack deeper into the maze, while Wendy and Danny make their escape. As Jack becomes increasingly lost in the maze, the hotel's influence over him weakens, and he begins to regain moments of clarity. He realizes the danger he has put his family in and tries to backtrack, but he becomes disoriented in the shifting maze and eventually succumbs to the cold and dies. Wendy and Danny, now free from Jack's grasp, make their way back to the hotel and find Dick Halloran's snowmobile, which he had used to try to reach them. They start the snowmobile and leave the Overlook, narrowly avoiding a final encounter with the hotel's malevolent forces. In the aftermath, Wendy and Danny are rescued, and they eventually return to normalcy. However, the events at the Overlook Hotel have left deep scars on their psyche, and they struggle to move on from the trauma they experienced. Wendy tries to understand the extent of the hotel's supernatural influence on Jack and the horrors they faced, while Danny grapples with his psychic abilities and the responsibility that comes with them. The novel ends with a chilling epilogue that takes place several months later, revealing that the Overlook Hotel has been closed for the winter due to the events that occurred. It is implied that the hotel's dark presence still lingers, as the ghost of Jack Torrance, now a permanent resident of the hotel, reflects on his fate and eagerly awaits the arrival of the next caretaker. Throughout The Shining, Stephen King masterfully builds a sense of escalating tension and horror, creating a chilling atmosphere that permeates the entire novel. He delves into the depths of the human psyche, exploring themes of addiction, isolation, madness, and the thin line between reality and the supernatural. The characters are well developed and relatable, and their struggles with their inner demons and the external forces of the hotel make for a compelling and terrifying story. King's vivid and descriptive prose brings the Overlook Hotel to life, making it a character in its own right, with its dark history, eerie hallways, and sinister secrets. The supernatural elements are seamlessly woven into the story, creating a sense of dread and unease that lingers long after the final page is turned. The Shining is a classic horror novel that has become a cultural phenomenon, inspiring numerous adaptations, including a successful film directed by Stanley Kubrick. It remains a must-read for fans of horror literature, and its complex exploration of the human psyche and the supernatural make it a timeless and haunting tale.